welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of Panthers Shadow. We are without Patrick today, but that leaves me, Jake, and Jack to go over, well, quite a list of stuff to talk about, like we alluded to last week. But first and foremost, before we get into it, happy belated birthday. Your 21st was on Monday, so welcome
Yeah.
to that chapter of your life.
Yeah. Haven't done the proper celebrating yet. I'm saving that for this weekend just because, birthday on a Monday, not exactly a whole lot to do. But, looking to do some fun stuff over this weekend, looking to hit up some bars, probably hit up some dispensaries, get to do all the fun stuff that I've been waiting about 21 years to do.
Yeah, well, you can't rent a car yet, so you don't get the most fun part of being an
No.
adult, but at least you get the alcohol. You get the alcohol.
Yeah. And the weed here, Michigan's a legal state.
Yes. And they make it all well known. There's a lot of dispensaries actually over in our area, which is kind of interesting. You'd think that with us being a little redder that you wouldn't see as much, but
Yeah.
no, it's quite prevalent.
Yeah. I mean, here in Metro Detroit, literally, depending on where you one, it seems like every other street corner.
But let's just jump into it then. There's a few quick things we want to just kind of go through this week, including some lovely drama that you'll get to just share. You know a little bit more about that than I do. But first thing that came out earlier this week was I thought was interesting or cool to see is that Eastern end up getting paid about 210 grand for allowing the USFL usage of their facilities for training camps. So good amount of money that gets put to Eastern that could go a long way for them.
Yeah, no, like that's easily the equivalent of like a bunch of students' tuition at Eastern. They make that place pretty affordable to go to. Probably about like 100 kids worth of tuition going directly from the Panthers and the Stars and the USFL hosting training camp there. Will bolster a lot to go out there. Eastern is a pretty dang good school. I know I got into there when I was, doing my rendezvous of applying for schools at the end of high school. Um, so yeah, I think that's really awesome. And they're doing a lot in the area too, obviously in Ypsilanti and in Ann Arbor. So yeah, I mean, s- the USFL is making sure that if you're helping out the league, you know, you'll get a handsome paycheck for it.
Yeah, so I would hope that Eastern gets to use some of that, like you said, to help with some tuitions. That'd be nice to see. But at the very least, they should be able to improve the facilities. I know that there have been some criticisms about Wright Nearson not being, you know, quite the nicest facility. That's not quite the nicest stadium to be at. So that 210 should go a long way. So it's good to see that. And looks like the Panthers will have a cheer squad. This just came out. Doesn't look like there's been a lot of press on it, but I got a presser,
Yeah.
and so looks like we got 19 cheerleaders out of over 75 women that tried out for it. Um, it's obviously more or less just for recreational. This isn't anything that you know to be quite the career. Because as noted in here by the quote from the cheer head coach, Jenna Lanzetta, our cheerleaders are from 8 different universities and colleges throughout Michigan with varying careers from lawyers to therapists to teachers. We look forward to starting our season at Ford Field to enhance the game day experience and make an impact in the community. So clearly, I said this doesn't sound like they're going to try to take advantage of young women looking to you know do anything other than dance. Obviously, they're already
Yeah,
set in other careers and good careers like again like attorneys, therapists, teachers, something that that makes a good money, good impact. So nice to
yeah.
see that. Yeah, they have a few photos, videos out on that. Not really a whole lot else to talk about, but I figured they bothered to send a press release on it, so something that we'd mention here. Then on to the drama. This one I was not there for. I only got to see it after all of that had happened the next morning. But yeah, Discord, the official USFL Discord was an interesting space on what, Saturday night?
uh, I think it was earlier this week, actually. So for those of you who don't know, well, it was late at night. It was probably past midnight. I was gonna say this kind of kicked off. One of the admin's accounts of the USFL Discord server got breached. There was some sort of hack. I don't know how, and I'm not really gonna say how. But basically, what had happened was that the hacker got an account, and in turn, got in control of all the Fox related Discord servers. Obviously, the most notable one to us here is the USFL. And they basically ripped the server to shreds, deleted all the channels, got rid of everything, and really just did a number on the server itself. The user themselves they were not very good. They were surprisingly, much like a lot of Discord hackers, not a person. I know, shock horror. Who would have guessed it? Um, but after all that, everything kind of like cooled down. I want to say it all was kind of said and done around 2:45 a.m. Eastern time. And I watched most of it unfold because I am I am a night owl to the highest degree and stay up until 2:45 on nights when I have class the next morning because I have nothing better to do apparently. As of right now, everything seems to be back up and running. The server is, I think, open again if you want to get back into the server. They did slightly change the vanity URL. So if you want to join the server, it is now discord.gg/USFL fans. Whereas I think a few nights ago it was discord.gg/USFL. I think someone else got a hold of that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
There is a
that's the long and the
server
short
that's
of it.
currently sitting on it.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
long and the short of
so
it.
that was more widespread than just the USFL Discord. Okay, so that's crazy. Yeah, I know. I think I know the admin's account that got compromised. So yeah, do you know the details on like how the account was compromised? Because I only know it's compromised.
Again, I don't really know. There are a lot of fairly common ways that you can get your account compromised through Discord. Most notably, I think Discord is particularly susceptible to phishing attacks. Like
Mm.
you get sent a link and then you put in your login info and then like boom, someone could take control of your account like that. That is probably how it happened, but I am not privy to that information. I'm not gonna like say solidly, but that is the most likely way that it happened. And like, because even the way that the phishing works, it can even bypass a two-factor authentication. If you go through a certain way, which basically the moral of that story is when you're logging onto Discord, never use the QR code feature on your phone because that thing bypasses the 2FA. And if you care at all about your Discord account, um, you would like to keep it secure a little bit, you know?
Yeah, good tip to live by. OPSEC is always important, especially when your account controls, some things of importance. So probably not the worst idea to avoid some of those conveniences just because it might be quicker. Obviously, you sacrifice some security on that. But as you said, yeah, the server is back up. Looks like that most of the channels are reopening. So if you were on there, want to be back on there, you're gonna have to reconnect your account if you have, any of the NFTs and stuff like that. But simple, same thing as it was before. But
Yeah,
nice to see that it's back. I think it just came back on Wednesday of this week,
yeah,
so just
yeah, and I
yesterday.
think yeah, and I think also if you like kind of sat in during like the time frame, they did give you back access to the relevant holders lounges. So if you didn't leave, that you're given a role and you're still good. But beyond that, yeah, like you're gonna have to reconnect your wallet, which is hard. And assuming you have everything running through the same MetaMask wallet, you should be.
Yeah, I didn't have any problems, so nice to see that back because I am really excited to see what some of the perks we get this year. So I made sure I got myself all situated. But speaking of that, I know it's not quite in the order that we have it, but the merch drop. We got some merch. Big drop by the league for all the teams. Unfortunately, um, by the time this episode comes out, you're not going to be able to take advantage of the 23% discount for 23 days till kickoff. If you didn't already take advantage of it before listening to this episode, but bunch of merch dropped. Some pretty good stuff there. Like there's a few things that I think I'm actually going to pick up, and I'll haven't done that yet. I will probably end up doing that as soon as we get done recording, so I can make sure that I do take advantage of that 23% discount. So, unfortunately, since you guys will be hearing this at the earliest on Friday, unless the league extends it, you're probably not going to be able to take advantage of it. So, that sucks. But still, get some of the new
Yeah,
merch. A lot of it looks good. I know I'm going to be adding more, like I said, and then be wearing that to the games.
yeah, and they have new merch for all the teams, for all ages and all fits. So if you want to go for like a certain vibe, they most likely have something available for you. And again, some of the merch is pretty good. I gotta say, at least I like it a lot. Like I was telling you before the show, they have like a block wordmark shirt that I really like. And most of it also is fairly affordable, especially like just the t-shirts. They are all most all of them run under $30. So you'll be able to get those for pretty cheap. Some of them go a little bit higher up, but if you're looking to get just like a t-shirt, to go into the game in, not gonna break the bank.
Yeah, yeah. Other than the long sleeve T-shirt, I think the only other T-shirt that is above 30, like you mentioned, is the Breaking T T-shirt, which personally I love. I bought that from Breaking T earlier before it dropped on the USFL shop. Love that shirt. It's one of my favorites. Not just because it's Panthers, it's a really nice one. So even then, that's worth it. So yeah, my problem is going to just be not overspending. I've been doing that. I've been doing that enough lately that I need to just slow down. But this merch drop is not going to help me anyhow. I can tell you that much.
Your bank account's you're gonna be wailing at you by the end of the season.
It won't be able to whale because it'll be on life support.
True. True.
But hey,
True.
that is why I'm thankful for the price of the tickets because that definitely helped to ease
Oh,
some of
absolutely.
this. And then I don't think we really did we touch on it last week at all about the TV schedule? I know
Um, None of like the specifics. I know we talked broadly, They're having more games on the networks, but we haven't broken down uh how exactly it's all going to break, especially when it comes to the Panthers themselves.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. But yeah, quick rundown. Like last year, and granted, it was the first season, and Fox and NBC weren't going to give up all of their precious time slots on Fox and NBC for a league that hasn't proven itself yet. But this year, they are definitely stepping that up. They are putting their money where their mouth is, and of the 43 total games in the season, 29 are going to be on either Fox or NBC. So, quite the step up from what we saw last year.
Yeah, and I was, I was kind of looking at their press release, looking at the presser before, and they were especially emphasizing that a lot of the OTA games are going to be featured right after marquee programming. So so Fox is going to put them after NASCAR Cup Series races and after MLB. And I know for NBC, they're airing one of their primetime games that they're getting this year right after the Kentucky Derby. So they're making sure to really highlight putting these games right after high viewership lead in programming, which is shown to work many times in other leagues before. Just stuff that you can leave on the TV that can be captivating, and hopefully it'll be something you'll actively want to watch compared to, um, I don't like to directly bring up XFL comparisons, but you look at the XFL's lead in programming, a lot of it's not stuff that people are probably just going to have on the TV because they're going to be actively watching that and then leave it on for the XFL games. A lot of the times it'll be like a random basketball game or, on the FX, it'll be like Mission Impossible reruns or whatever. So I think that's a really big thing for the USFL to be like piggybacking off of the massive TV exposure they're going to be getting.
Oh yeah, no, I think like I said, that kind of just shows how much more that they're actually investing in the USFL, and they definitely want to drive that viewership. I think obviously they were happy enough with the viewership last year that we continued into season two, but this year definitely put their money where their mouth is and really get those numbers up. And the best way to do that, put more on OTA and yeah, get piggyback off of some of your best. Like last year, we had Kentucky Derby was one lead in, and that seemed to do well. So they're obviously looking to duplicate that and more. And we get to benefit from that with 7 of our games being broadcast on Fox or NBC. So I'm happy about that. I was not thrilled with our slate last year, and then our record did not help. We kept getting flexed to some of the worst ones, which you know makes sense. I get it, but now that they kind of committed a little bit better to or committed more to the definite schedule this year, I hope they don't do much flexing. I imagine that they'll still flex. Obviously, you can set a schedule and it isn't going to be something that has to be set in stone, but I think they're going to be a little more beholden to it. So I like the time slots that we got,
Yeah.
and I'm good to see that they've already done that. They've already committed to that. So love seeing that. Um, and then one thing that might be surprising to some people is that instead of Fox hosting the championship game this year, it's going to be NBC. So it seems like they're switching on and off.
Yeah, it might just be like something where Fox takes it one year, NBC takes it the other. Y like, you would know this more, like, is Fox taking both the semifinal games this year? Is that kinda how they're looking to split it? Because I know Fox.
No, one is on NBC and one is on
So
Fox.
same as
So
last year,
they're
so it's
each
just
getting one.
NBC takes the title game.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Which
I I
I
still
think
find
kind
it.
of
Oh, go on.
I was to me it kind of seems speaks more to that. NBC and Fox see this as more of a partnership. Like if they're willing to trade off, obviously the deal is, that this is more of a partnership, and I like seeing that because again, I think that speaks to both networks wanting to, put a lot more investment into this, and that just gives me even more confidence in the league's long term success.
Yeah, especially for the NBC to be this excited about it, since this is really their first time back in the spring football scene since the 2001 edition of the XFL, which showed promise, but then obviously kind of completely burned itself out as that season went along. But for NBC now to be so excited to say, "Hey Fox, can we take the championship game?" That's really big. Um, depending on how they kind of portray it, how they what they do with it on their end.
Yeah, and I think that just sets up, the future years that if they keep going back and forth. I'm okay with that as long as it's on OTA. I am good. Then I think the last thing that we're going to just kind of quickly go through is we finally got the Maulers uniforms.
Yeah,
I don't know what to think, like, they're not bad, like, I know maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but I did not hate the uniforms for the Mullers last year, even in the purple and, orange. I didn't hate it. So, that the fact that they just did a color swap on them, because that's ultimately what they did, I don't hate it. The only thing that has me scratched in my head is the fact that it took this long for them to just drop what is essentially get a color swap. There,
yeah,
so as long with how long they were drawing this out, I thought that they were maybe gonna do a little bit more to it. So I'm surprised and yet not really surprised.
yeah. It was a bit disappointing to see them like. Again, I think I like the uniforms. I liked what the Maulers did last year, and I like what they're doing this year. Yeah, I just kind of felt like we really waited this long for this. I think the only notable thing that did change is that I think the away number font is slightly different.
No,
But
that was just the lighting of the one image. Like if you look closer, you could see where
oh, okay,
the
yeah,
numbers are right. Yeah, but no, like when people were saying that, I'm like, oh, I definitely could see why everyone was seeing it like that. But no, they are the same font on both,
yeah. So it's
which is
just
good.
like,
Not bad.
yeah, it's yeah. I mean, they're not bad uniforms. Just felt like why did we wait this long for them? And why did these ones drop before Memphis? We're still waiting on the Memphis ones, despite the fact that Memphis was revealed back in November,
Yeah.
and we are a smidge over 3 weeks away from kickoff. We still don't know what they look like. I mean, we
Yeah,
know their
that
helmets.
that again is a head scratcher. Yes, we know the helmets. That both of the teams obviously dropped the helmets this week. Obviously, Mullers, we got their uniforms, so we know everything from top to bottom. But yeah, I do like the Showboats helmets quite a bit. Having that matte blue, you know, strikes a chord with me. I can't imagine why it does. That matte blue, and then the yellow. Something about that color combination.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder where that would come from.
Hey, the stripe is not quite the same as the wings, but you know what? We'll give them a solid B for effort on that. But no, overall, I do really like the Showboats helmets, and hopefully, we get those uniforms soon because I want to do a uniform ranking. I mean, I already know my number one and two. I don't
Yeah,
foresee that changing. Showboats could maybe make a splash there, pun unintended, but,
yeah. I mean,
I think
they
my number 1 and 2 are gonna stay the same, but I do want to do a uniform ranking, and we can't really do that without all 8, and that require the Showboats uniforms being dropped. I have slight hope that they drop tomorrow, but My gut says next week because we've gotten no heads up today.
No, no. So moral of that story really is just get on it already, USFL. We've been waiting for like 6 months.
Right, like you said, we got 3 weeks until kickoff, so, I mean, they can really only make us wait 3 more weeks because that is a home
Yeah,
game, so we will know what their home jerseys look like in 3 weeks, whether they release them or not, but, yeah, I think good money's probably on next week that we'll see them. So, I am looking forward to that, and then, we'll get to do that for next week's show, hopefully.
yeah, that'll be fun.
Alright, so a little bit more Panthers specific topics here is I know we kind of talked about it last week with the draft. I know that if you don't really have any idea of what was actually going on or what we were talking about last week made very little sense. So kind of want to clarify that a little bit more. Like like we mentioned last week, it was a futures draft. So instead of drafting players that you expected to see them play this year, they were players that no were drafting the rights to the players so that if they do end up signing with the USFL, the rights belong to the team that drafted them. So not necessarily guys we're gonna see.
Yeah,
I really don't expect that we're going to see that many.
yeah,
If we see any players, it's not going to be until mid-season because most of who the teams were drafting were players expected to go like late day 3 or be,
yeah,
undrafted free agents. But still, I think the expectation is that these players are going to end up on an NFL camp at some point. I mean, which to me it just makes sense because you want the best of the guys that you think could end up playing in the league in the USFL, but obviously you were gonna go after like any Bryce Youngs or CJ Strouds,
no,
but you weren't just gonna go after some guy that you could just straight up sign. Like these guys are
yeah,
good, but maybe not ones that that we really truly expect to stick around in the NFL. I hope these guys are ones that stick around in the NFL, but I tend to agree that
yeah,
yeah, most of them that we saw drafted probably weren't. But I still think they get a good chance, a good shot at the NFL camps, and then we'll see them maybe later on. But I think for the most part, these are you know future prospects, guys that we will see in 2024 and beyond.
beyond. Yeah, I think at most teams will maybe see one, maybe two prospects in their draft pool in 2023, and those will be like towards the end of the season. And even if you do, they probably won't be super flat. There'll be a lot of like the linemen taken, maybe like depth linebacks. And granted, I don't envy that the GM deal would do for this draft because like you're dealing with like such a weird like limbo to try and find players, to try and find guys who are good but too good. Like it
Exactly.
like
Yes.
it's an unenviable position to be in. If you're guys like Steve K's trying to figure out what to do. Um, and it seemed like most of the teams that wanted those big splashes, they went with them early.
Yeah.
We didn't see any like big meme picks towards the end of the draft where it was like, oh, and the Generals took Max Duggan. Sure, why not? As funny as that would have been, that wasn't really going to
Yeah.
happen. And the majority of these guys are just going to wait until after the draft, anyways, before they even consider their USL contracts.
Right, exactly. You waiting to see if you get your name called, which makes sense. I would do the same thing because obviously, again, the guys that NFL or that the USFL are going after are guys that are borderline NFL ready or borderline NFL players. And so, these players are going to want to sit and wait. They want to see if they get their name called, if they can get signed. So they're definitely going to wait until after the draft. And that doesn't happen until week 3 leading up into the, week 3 of the USFL season. So at the very latest, you got guys signing after week 3.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to see them at the earliest maybe taking the field week 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so not guys that you're going to see making impact, not guys that you're going to see, making like all USFL impact or anything like that. Maybe, I'm not saying never, but, I don't I don't see that happening, so this draft was definitely an interesting one. Like I said, I do not envy the position of the GMs and coaches trying to draft players because, yeah, little mo little bit more nuanced than even the NFL draft. With granted, higher stakes in NFL, but the fact that, in the NFL, if you offer a guy a contract, he's gonna sign it. Not so much
Yeah.
the case here with the USFL, with having the NFL being, obviously the upper echelon and being like the ultimate dream and goal. So, yeah, like you said, really, really kind of an interesting position for GMs to be in. But so overall, it was a 10-round draft, kind of much more of your normal traditional draft. No position group assignment. You could draft any position, any player, you know, any round. Obviously, not any player. It had to be a player that was eligible for the NFL draft this year, 2023. So, I mean, one of 3,000 players. So if a team did want to, like you said, take a Max Duggan or even, for shits and giggles, take a Bryce Young, they could have. Theoretically, they could have drafted him, but um, thankfully they didn't. Nobody made any obvious wasted picks on the guys that weren't, that you knew right away aren't going to see. They all, for the most part, are ones that very well could end up in the USFL at some point. But so the Panthers had the first overall pick and first pick in every round, because we won the Tank Bowl in week 10 versus the Maulers instead of the team with the absolute worst record, because we were both 1-8 going into week 10. Moose and company decided to make things a little more competitive, give teams a little more incentive to actually go out there and play. And yeah, we won that right to pick first in every round.
Yeah, and I gotta say we put it to some decent use. Obviously it's kind of hard to say if we won or lost the draft, just because again there's so much variables of if we're even gonna see these guys suit up. But we took some good talent and we took some local talent, which I think is probably the key portion for the Panthers.
Yeah, and I think that is something that in an interview, Coach Nolan had even speaked on, like if they were deciding between a couple different players and one had more local ties, they would end up opting for the local talent. So clearly, similar to like the Shea Patterson pick last year, the league wanted to tie in the market with the team, and I think USFL is a little more successful in being able to do that this year with Panthers actually playing in Michigan. So that'll help. That'll go a long way, but they definitely seem to want to do that with talent. And yeah, like you said, we got a few players from local schools, so they definitely made good use of that. But before we get into our picks, one thing I definitely wanted to point out and laugh about was New Jersey getting penalized for their interesting roster management this offseason.
Yeah, it seemed to be the general offseason strategy was to sign everyone they can and then figure out the rest later. Because what they exactly got penalized for was releasing players that they had signed onto contracts during the USFL's free agency period. Um, if I'm not mistaken, the way that the league's rule set works, you can only release players who are on contract from last season. And obviously, they released guys who were not supposed to be released. Most notably, quarterback Daquan Neal, who IFL standout. He was signed to the Generals for a grand total of about 5 weeks, and then uh, yeah, and then they just dropped him. So the Generals got to the back of the line, and it appears they just continue to keep releasing guys they signed during free agency. So I don't know how exactly the league is liking what they're doing out there, since it appears they're just going to keep going with it. Bold strategy, Cotton. Let's out for them.
Yeah, it's, like I was really curious to see what their strategy was during the offseason because they kept signing players at a much faster rate than any other team did, and it seemed like they were the only ones confused about the roster limits. And then all of a sudden, I think that final tally that they had before they started having to cut down was like 71, and I think everybody else, the highest anybody else had was 60. So, like, they went way overboard with their signing, and like you said, what they actually got penalized for wasn't the fact that they actually went that high. I suppose that they probably would have been fine with signing the 71, but in order for them to not do things against league rules, they would have had to cut all of existing players. Like you said, they can't cut any of their free agents not until they actually spend physical time with the team. So yeah, they would have had to cut down to get to that roster camp size of 58. They would have had to cut 13 of their existing guys, and obviously they didn't want to do that, so they ended up cutting those free agents that they had signed, and they ended up getting penalized for that and lost their first round pick. They still got their 10, but that last pick was compensated with the last overall pick with the USFL's Mr. Irrelevant 80th overall pick. But I just
Yeah,
thought that was funny, because, yeah, they seem to keep doing those antics even, recently cutting, before camp started cutting another guy that, they had signed in free agency, so no idea what they're doing there. Again, they're the only team that doesn't know what's going on with roster limits, so I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt,
yeah,
but,
yeah, and
division rival
especially
somewhere.
considering, especially considering like how comparatively light the punishment was. They may have seen that and went like, "Oh, that's all you're gonna do? You're gonna make it so that we pick last out of a player right stretch? Well, okay, this isn't really gonna impact us. Goodbye, random so and so."
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how if they get penalized and how they do that going forward because yeah, it seems like especially like with these players not being ones that we anticipate seeing immediately, and the fact that they'll I suppose after this year they'll be able to go ahead and you know sign players as if they would. Not sure the punishment deterred them, so we'll definitely be interesting how the league handles that going forward. But I'm good with calling generals cheaters and making them making an example out of them.
Yeah. Hey, either way, either way.
And all right, so let's get into our picks. So I don't know how in depth we really want to get. I'll be honest, outside of the guys that I knew, I haven't really gone too much into them because while I may be excited for the potential that they hold, again, I pretty much have another year or so to familiarize myself with them before we can realistically expect to see any of them. But as we alluded to earlier, we did take three local guys, two from Eastern, one from Michigan State. The lone Sparty of the bunch was our first overall pick, offensive tackle Jarrett Horst.
Yeah, and Horst, I remember when we were doing the Twitter space, he's actually the sort of guy who could be seen on the field towards the end of the season. He's currently projected to be a UDFA in the NFL. Still, he's a very good player. What was funny was, God, who was it? In like his draft graphic, they showed him blocking. I think it was Mike Morris they had him going up
Yes.
against, and he held his own. Mike Morris, not a guy that you want to take lightly on the defensive line for the Wolverines this past season. And the Spartans this past year, well, as a unit, they weren't that great. They have a lot of really good like individual pieces, and I'm excited to see what Jared Horst can do for the Panthers. Realistically, like if you're wearing the green, you're kind of considered the rival. But once you're out of the green and white, say you put on the royal plum and silver, or you put on the blue and silver, you just become another member of the team. I'm excited to see what he can do if he ends up on the Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, and as we all know, offensive line are a tough bunch to get a good group of in especially in spring football. Like it's tough to get good old linemen. They're a hot commodity, so any chance that we can, get our hands on one, put put the rights down on them, I'm not going to be opposed to that. And good pick, good pick with that. Well, I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens if he can end up joining later on in the season. But yeah, I'm not gonna hold my breath for any of these guys.
No, no.
It- So with the second pick for us, our second round pick, eighth overall, I think is probably the biggest splash. One of the biggest splashes for the entire draft, but definitely for us, our biggest, the most notable pick would have to be that in Tanner Morgan, the quarterback out of Minnesota, who started to have a really good year this past year, and I think again some people were holding out hope that we were going to see him, and leading into the camp, us only having two quarterbacks really, started the rumor mill that, maybe we were going to see Tanner end up signing, but obviously that did not happen. We did end up signing our third quarterback, which we'll discuss in a little bit later. But so I loved the pick personally. I was excited for
Mhm.
it. Definitely one I honestly think that he'll stick around in a camp, and we probably won't see him until maybe not in sign until 23 or 24 in the off season before the 2024 USFL season kicks off.
Yeah, Tanner. Yeah, and he's a guy who showed he had a lot of talent. Went to Minnesota with PJ Fleck. Originally was actually a commit to Western Michigan University, so could have actually had another little connection there. But yeah, he was second team All Big Ten back in 2019. He's a decent force to be reckoned with. He's ran into some issues throughout his career. I think if I remember correctly, of last year he got put out. Was he injured towards the end of last year? Because when I remember something like that happening, um, with Tannerman, but he's a very solid quarterback. I can see him working out in the spring leagues, but obviously, hopefully he gets that rookie contract up in the NFL and gets to play a fair bit up there.
Yeah,
He
like I said, this is kind of one of those weird spots with all of these picks being that like I want these guys to all succeed in the league. Like I don't like hope that they fall to the USFL, but realistically we know that not everyone is going to get that chance. So hopefully he's one that does, but if not, I will gladly welcome Tanner onto our squad.
yeah. Yeah, same thing goes really everyone on our list. And he's obviously probably the biggest one that we can if we can get him, but he's also the least likely of the crew, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, just
Just
looking
going
over
down
our
the
draft
whole
picks.
list.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. So that's kind of one of those borderline flyers that like you go for, you swing for the fences a little bit, but honestly, I think that's still pretty reined in pick. Definitely a realistic one for him. So we'll see what that holds. At the very least, I don't see him playing, even if he did manage to not stick to a camp this year. Especially with our current QB room, I I wouldn't expect that we'd see him until at least 24 anyway. And then so for our third round pick, we went defense this time. Got linebacker Central Latham out of Southern Miss. I don't know how much research you have done on these guys. Sounds like a little bit more than I have. So if you know anything,
Well, I mean, when it
take the
comes
floor.
to Latham, if anything, it kind of more so pointed to a tendency that we really loaded up on the linebacker position throughout this draft. Latham, obviously, he was pretty good this past season. Had 4 sacks from the linebacker position, which is pretty dang good considering how run to get a sack as a linebacker. And he got 2 forced fumbles during his time at Southern Mississippi this past season. 5-year guy. He obviously took that extra year of eligibility from COVID. And in his game against Rice in the Lending Tree Bowl, showed up 7 tackles, with half a sack. He did pretty well. He's the sort of guy who's, another one of those fringe 7th round prospects who could follow the Panthers if things don't go their way. And especially in the linebacker world, it's kind of a hairy edge that you run if you're not on the field all the time.
Yeah, that's also he doesn't, at least from my cursory view. I don't know if he's one that could also do anything along on the line as an edge.
Yeah, he's mostly kind of like a run support sort of guy. He's not a guy that you're gonna send in blitzes. He's gonna be a guy that you kind of keep back. But it's not bad. Those linebackers are very useful. Linebacker also is such like a wide position that you could have 2 linebackers that essentially do the exact opposite things and still be equally valuable to a team. You can have a linebacker that functions basically as a glorified defensive end, and that linebacker can be just as valuable as someone who you almost have them function as a glorified. They can both be equally noteworthy.
Yeah, and especially if he's speedier, then that also helps too. Sideline to sideline, we know what what kind of a monster, what kind of problem that Devin Bush was at Michigan when he could go sideline to sideline. So I love my linebackers personally. They're one of my favorite defensive positions. So I am excited to see what he does. Can From what little I did, I'm not upset. Wouldn't be upset if he ends up on us, but I feel like I'm going to say this for all of the players that we got. So,
Yeah.
and with so our fourth round pick, we went O line again. This time from Miami of Florida, DJ Scaife.
Yeah. Yeah. Scaife, really all that can be said about him. Really big guy, 6'3", 313 pounds. A returning a continuing star at Miami. You know, that program's been a bit down, but it's always been able to bring really high quality talent when needed. So, you know, I'll be excited to see what comes from him.
I mean, just my quick look here. I mean, the fact that they were able to pull off in 21 what against Virginia Tech 411 yards. Not, not
Yeah.
the worst output. At a few of those, and he helped bolster that. Like he started all 12 games as a junior. So I mean, he said one that has been consistent contributor to Miami, and while they've not been always the best as of late, their offenses has shown some flashes, and it looks like he's been a good part of that. Then for fifth round, 32 overall, we went linebacker again with Deshaun White out of Oklahoma.
Yeah, Deshaun White, he's another one of those guys. A little bit more of pass coverage was kind of his thing when he was with Oklahoma. Had two interceptions during his 2022 season with the Sooners. Those were those were his two interceptions throughout his career. Just a very solid linebacker. Got the tackles, stopped plays when you needed him to. And realistically, if you're a defensive coordinator, you're a linebackers coach. That's what you want to see. You just want to see your linebackers being able to, at the end of the day, no matter what kind of linebacker they are, you know, whether they are like those defensive ends or they're like run support, pass support, or you just want to make sure they're going to get tackles at the end of the day.
And absolutely. And then for sixth round, 40th overall, we got Levi Bell, defensive end out of Texas State.
Yeah, Texas State, a relatively small college, obviously small-ish, you know, lower end of the FBS ladder. But Bell himself, relatively big guy, 6'1", 275. Um, had a really balling out year last year. Made the PFF All American third team, All Sun Belt second team last year too, and was all first team for the PFF All Sun Belt team. So this is a guy who's got a lot of talent. Of when he played his last year at Texas State, played his previous few seasons at Louisiana Tech. You know, so he has some familiarity with a certain USFL coach. Um, you know, just a
Uh,
very, very athletic guy.
which can never be too short of. The fact that, yeah, I mean, coming from, like you said, Texas State being one of the, you know, kind of bottom towards the bottom of, FBS, being able to, to make it at least, the third team, uh, it's a, I think that's a good accomplishment. It's something that you wouldn't necessarily expect the smaller guys to make so.
No. Next up on this pile, we got another local boys that we took in the 7th round. Gunnar Oaks out of Eastern Michigan University.
First receiver slash tight end of the draft.
Yeah, and like his stats at EMU were fairly solid. He was mostly kind of used right end too, throughout his career at Eastern Michigan. So he's kind of one of those guys who might fly under the radar most proper NFL scouts and might not really even be thinking about him that deeply. But he's the sort of guy who spring leagues are made for. Maybe someone who didn't get as good of a shot in college as he may deserve, or someone who might just get overlooked because one reason or another. Um, so it'll so he's definitely a guy who I think we'll probably see at some point, but what he'll actually end up being is another question.
Yeah, I'm I find it again still hard to discuss or like talk about some of these guys because like it's I did not do super amount of research on them just simply again by the fact that I'm more focused on who we're actually going to see this year and who's going to be competing
Yeah.
for a roster spot. So waiting to see what happens to the guys, and then of course dig much more into tape and their histories. Um, but the next pick, our eighth pick, number 56 overall, is our first smaller college below the FBS level. Before and now, we all went FBS. This one being Andrew Farmer, another defensive end out of the HBCU Lane College.
Yeah, and he was a freakish athlete at Lane College. Through his senior season, he got 58 total tackles, 25 tackles for loss, 6 sacks throughout the season. Really showed off his talents at Lane College. And I think it's cool that the USFL in general had a lot of HBCU talent taken. I think the Generals took the most out of any of the teams in terms of who took the most. But yeah,
Yeah, I
for a
believe.
small college guy, like he's a talented guy.
Yeah, and to your point that you're saying, yeah, there were 12 HBCU players drafted overall, with four of them being by the Generals, and then everybody else had one.
Yeah, which again, cool to see that the USFL is like uh giving HBCU guys that kind of shot. Because there's a lot of talent down there, a lot of talent at these schools, and their publicity nowadays.
Yeah, and that was one problem that, well, it still is a problem that plagues the NFL is the representation for the smaller guys, especially the HBCU. So seeing the USFL being a place to, you know, make more of an effort to give these guys a shot and not to play lip service and to just bring in HBCU guys. Obviously, the ones that they're bringing in are ones that they anticipate, could produce for the league. So, they're recognizing the talent, but actually giving these guys the the shot that they did actually deserve that. So they kind of tend to get overlooked in the NFL, which I mean it's kind of part of the problem with these smaller schools, but which is again why these spring leagues are so great.
Yeah.
But aside from that little diatribe, ninth
Mhm.
pick, number 64 overall. Again, with the O line, this time we got a tackle in Chim Okorafor out of Benedictine.
Yeah, and it seemed to be that he kind of hopped around a little bit from school to school, played a little bit at Benedictine, also going to play a little bit at Pittsburgh State University back in 2021. So, just a really big guy out of these smaller schools, 6'6", 320. So this man, like, assuming he's got the mobility that you need for an offensive lineman, he can be a huge asset on the Panthers line uh, when and if he comes on down to play.
I think he was the one I noticed being the biggest uh, guy that we took. Definitely one to help to spring some holes for our already impressive running back room. If, like I said, if he ends up coming down to playing in the USFL this year or beyond. And then last but not least, for our final pick of the 2023 college draft is number 72 overall, City Sow, another tackle out of Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, and ending it off with a local guy, not really much to complain about. Solid pick. Again, it's hard. It'll be hard to see, especially for like these linemen. I think it's good to stock up on them so we have them on hand, because Lord knows, it's hard to find O line, as both the USFL and XFL have shown over the past 2 years. Is that line play has been probably their biggest issue
Yeah,
on a
by
regular
far.
basis. Um, so I definitely don't disagree with loading up on linemen first over even like a lot of the skill positions.
Absolutely. Like I said, they are a high commodity. They are always in short supply. And the thing with Sao is that he actually, from what I was seeing, he's kind of a climber in the draft class. So this might be one of those picks that we don't end up seeing, which great for him. Something that like I said, hope is the case for all of the picks. But him being a climber, we'll have to see where he goes. But uh, definitely, I know like I said, I've been saying this for multiple picks, but he's definitely one that I would love to see on our line for sure if that comes to pass. But no, I think he has a good shot of actually sticking and landing in the league this year. So I will root for him either way.
Yeah.
But for the guys that will be coaching our uh, our players this
Mm,
year, coaching stuff. So
Hard.
I know again we kind of touched on this last week a little bit. Only one returning guy, in that being offensive coordinator now, adding quarterbacks to his plate this year, being Eric Marty. We are starting fresh everywhere else. I know you talked a little bit about Mike Nolan, our new head coach, taking over for, of course, Jeff Fisher with his 40 years of coaching experience, in the NFL and FBS level. Of
Yeah.
course, known for his suits, one that kind of hard to forget.
Yeah. And he's been known for primarily being a defensive guy. He brings that more defensive mindset to the USFL. which I think makes sense for why he kind of kept on the offensive coordinator who we'll be getting into here, Eric Marty.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And kind of like what I was talking about last week is that the 2022 offensive stats for the Panthers, well, again, the record didn't show it. Our offense was surprisingly potent. Again, first in pass yards per game, second in yards per game, and fourth in points per game. Obviously, not good enough to give us a winning record, but lethal. So we were in
Nonetheless,
all of the games, so it it was one hope. Retaining Marty was one that I absolutely hoped that we did. As soon as I heard that Fisher was stepping down, I immediately messaged him and was trying to make sure that he was going to stay on the staff because I liked our offense. Again, it didn't translate into wins, but you know, you could be forgiven to not, know how good our offense actually was. But seeing that, knowing the style of play, knowing the quarterbacks that we had on roster, I wanted him to stay, and I couldn't be happier that we actually get him to return.
yeah, and yeah, Marty himself, a very smart guy, came in from Grambling State beforehand, and he's always been just a very solid offensive mind. He has a mindset. He has like something that he works with, but he's flexible too. Like a lot of what he was running with in the USFL was stuff that he wasn't really known for a long time beforehand.
Yeah, so then giving him another year to continue to kind of work on that and flesh it out. Again, having some familiar players to being able to do it with, namely his running backs, quarterbacks, and you know, good number of receivers. Not all of his receivers. Obviously, we lose, Lance Lenore,
Yeah,
especially, but being able to retain a couple of our bigger contributors from 2022 in Joe Walker and Ish Hyman, I definitely, and of course our tight end Marcus Baugh. I
yeah,
think that definitely helps set us up this year with him. Another year in the system. Always good to be able to do that. Offense definitely seems to be that tricky thing. I always feel bad for quarterbacks when they only have 1 year with a coordinator. It just so hard to click. So I'm thrilled again that he gets to return.
yeah. And definitely, like, with the quarterbacks that we have, him being a quarterback centric guy, he's someone who can really help it out.
Yeah, former quarterback himself.
Yeah. Played all around the world too.
Yes, yeah, I do remember that he did play overseas for I think a year or two or so. And
Yeah, played
obviously
in
came back
Austria and in
over,
Italy.
yep, and then came back and started his coaching career. So, which it's been moving up. I
Yeah,
it's been moving up pretty well too.
yeah.
But
But now
under
moving
him,
around some
we
of the
the
positionals we got, yeah. Oh, go ahead
yeah
then.
yeah So under him, we got running backs coach Jordan Pavlison, who is a captain in the U.S. Marine Corps. So he's all about the discipline. He is going to take our already great running back room and instill some of that discipline. At least that's what I assume. I haven't, but
Yeah.
what else? I don't know if you can expect anything different from Marine, but to be on top of it.
Yeah, and he's also kind of been hound for the past few years, graduate assistant at Louisiana Monroe, assistant O line at Elon in 2021, and offensive line coach at University. which is a familiar school to the coaching staff because that's where Eric Marty played quarterback. World's really small once you start talking about it in that way.
Yeah, when you start looking through this, you start seeing all of those connections and that familiarity. And again, with having this being the first time that all of these staff are coming together, having those connections, I definitely think is going to help. But what also helps is again, like uh, like the 40 years of coaching experience with Mike Nolan, our offensive line coach. He is another one, our other coach with a lot of coaching experience, nearly 30 years of coaching experience for Tim Holtz, mostly in the college and high school ranks, but he did spend 6 years coaching on and off as an offensive assistant as well as an O line coach. He was most recently with the Raiders not too long ago, um, but just recently he was coaching high school. But looking at his resume, I did get a peek at that, and yeah, no, I think with our issues in O line last year, having the depth that we do this year and having the experience that he does, I think that we can see our offense line play turnaround. Um,
Yeah,
I know Marty had talked about, you know, having guys that he thought would work last year that obviously didn't. The scheme, the size of them, the athleticism didn't they were going for didn't quite work in the pro arena that he thought it would.
yeah,
And then you were talking a little bit earlier before we started, I think, with our tight ends coach, Gary Watkins.
yeah. Gary Watkins, he's a guy who has been around the block for a while. He is was a head coach at San Diego Mesa College, out there in the California. Sorry,
You good?
at the California community college scene. Also worked at Citrus College. Has had a sustainable winning record. Last year went 7-4 with Mesa, and he's also been a really good job at developing guys not only with their athleticism but also with their character. Um, with many of his players having over a 3.0 GPA, which that's good for because at this level you're not just looking at guys with playing ability, you're also looking for their character. And seeing that they got a guy who knows the ins and outs of how to make sure to keep someone strong and off the field, it can be a big help, and especially since a lot of these guys in the USFL are back in college. A lot of these guys are kind of wrapping up degrees, taking their final few credits. It's good to have someone like that on hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like you said, with the way that the league is really kind of pushing for education. Then to kind of round out the offense, we have wide receivers coach and special teams coach Jaron Fairman, who played at Fresno State, went undrafted in 2007, and then he pretty much jumped right into coaching some special teams and wide receivers from at Nickel State, and then managed his way up to be grad assistant at USC from 2013 to 2015, before then becoming the special teams coach at FAU in 2018 2019, and got tight ends added in 2020. So feel like our receivers and special teams are in good hands this year. I know special teams was something that Fisher prided himself in last year, and For the most part, once we got past the kicking woes, I think special teams were fairly fairly solid outside of that one kick return from Turpin in week 9. But considering that he is an NFL All Pro kick returner in the NFL this past year, gonna let that one slide.
Yeah, I think we'll let that one slide. Although I will admit there was something kind of tragically ironic about, oh yeah, the special teams guru lets up the biggest special teams play of the look at that.
Yeah, there were a few things like that last year that were funny in a painful way.
Yeah. Sh- Yeah, I think
But
Schadenfreude is the term, but that's for someone else. That's beside the point.
and so for defense, we got new defensive coordinator Steve Brown. Had some NFL experience as a Houston Oiler for a few years. I know I mentioned in the other with Tim Holt being 30 years of coaching experience. Can't forget, same thing we have with Steve Brown. Again, all at the college and NFL level. Was even a Super Bowl champion coach with the 2000 Rams, the greatest show on turf.
Yeah, and he managed secondary, which is a fairly solid accomplishment. They weren't exactly known for the defense, but the secondary, when it was put under pressure, was did hold its own. I think like there's that legendary performance of what is it like the 2000 NFC Championship game where it was like 11-6 the final, and the Rams had to grind it out on defense. And he's had some other successes here and there. The highest level he had before this was take control of the Kentucky defense from 2007 to 2010. During a time when Kentucky reached a few bowl games, so that's pretty dang good for them.
And then most recently, he was with East Tennessee State coaching their secondary. So been in the game for a minute. Has still coached recently. So I I actually really liked this hire. When it finally got announced, I was excited. So love to see what he can do with our defense. Considering
Yeah,
what we've been doing in our free agency and signing on our defense, I if our defense doesn't, let's just put it the way, I think that he would have to try to not succeed with the defense that we have.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think you could probably plug and play a lot of different guys and they'll be able to do well. I think Coach Brown will be able to take what we have and then even elevate it above, above I hope our wildest dreams. So
Yeah, and also a funny thing with
definitely.
him too. As of this week, he too celebrated a birthday. 6 old. He apparently was born also on March 20th, about 42 years before I was. So, happy birthday, Steve.
Happy belated Coach Brown. And then I know we kind of touched on these two last week, remarking that they were both from Towson just this past season. But we have defensive line coach Colin Bauer. He was the run game coordinator, defensive line coach, and recruiting coordinator for Towson. So quite the responsibilities this past year with them. He had recently also been with in the Big Ten for both Maryland and Rutgers between 2014 and 2017, being a graduate assistant for the defensive lines and quality coach at Rutgers. So he he's coached at It's a very high level. Granted, not the strongest squads in the Big East, but respectable nonetheless.
Yeah, no, I mean, just getting a guy like that, and especially who can kind of pin out talent like that, I think that's extremely important in the USFL at this level. Because not only like at schools like Rutgers and Maryland, but especially at Towson, where you're already kind of like you're kind of used to picking from scraps in a way. I don't like using the term, but you're not used to picking like whoever you want. I think definitely having a guy like that in a situation like this is really good to have on hand.
And like I said, seems like he is fine with having quite a bit on his plate, and considering who we have to go up against in some of these games this year, he'll definitely have his hands full. And then probably the coach with one of the deepest position groups that we have currently on our roster at linebacker is Coach Christian Runza, who, again, as we alluded to, coached with Coach Bauer at Towson just this past year. He has been at Towson since 2019, moved to linebackers starting in 2021.
Definitely think on the whole we have a very solid and very fun coaching staff to work with.
All right, and I think that is where we'll probably end that for today. We've gone over a little bit longer than we anticipated. We still have quite a bit more to talk about, but we will have that to wait until next week. We still have 3 weeks before the season kicks off anyway. So next week, you can look forward to us talking about the schedule, ticket situation. There's some information there that we're still waiting on the USFL for, so we will definitely let you guys know what we find out next week. But also, I've been putting out updates on our Twitter as I get them, as I figure that out. So if you want to kind of get an idea of what's going on there, definitely check that out. Otherwise, I'll hopefully be able to do a better breakdown of everything that's going on next week. Then, of course, training camp just started this week. Love what we're seeing out of the camp, but we'll be able to have a full week, almost full 2 weeks of camp to discuss next week, including a QB battle, and then we'll also do some fun stuff like our predictions for what we think will be our week one starters, and then also our power rankings. I put out mine not too long ago. Mine right now is still largely the same, but you'll get to see what Jack and Pat have for theirs. So with that, we'll leave you. Do not forget to do the giveaway. That is still going on for another couple weeks. So make sure you enter in that if you want to win a pair of tickets for the inaugural games at Ford Field on April 30th, week 3. That is a double header. So make sure you get signed up for that. Of course, follow us on all of our social media. Going to be USFL Shadow on Twitter, Instagram, and on YouTube. So definitely subscribe on YouTube. We are trying to put out content on that right now. Obviously, just doing the audio only podcast, but we will eventually get to be doing some video. And then you can follow me personally on Twitter at Cheese Soda. And you can follow Jack at Panthers Claw MI. And like I said, with that, we will leave you. Thanks for listening.